Hello all. This is my final Pecha Kucha slides. I decided to do my slides on Philonise Floyd, the Stop This Pain speech that he went ahead and delivered based on his brother's recent death in the summer. Let's get right into it. So the Stop the Pain speech by Philonise Floyd. In this speech, Philonise Floyd is the brother of the late George Floyd. In this speech, he delivers a powerful speech set on such raw emotion. In relation to this speech, Philonise dives into common issues such as racial injustices in America and also oppression against African American people in America as well. So the 4 W's: who, what, where, and when. On June 10th, 2020, one of the brothers of George Floyd, Philonise Floyd, whose death in Minneapolis sparked protests not only in the United States but around the world, went ahead and delivered a powerful opening statement to the Democratic-led congressional panel, asking them to please stop the pain that many African Americans have endured. George Floyd, as many may know, was an African American man that was killed by police services after being accused of forgery. The events of Floyd's killing took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and his brother went ahead and delivered the speech on June 10th, 2020. So I'd like to show a photo here of George Floyd's brother delivering his opening speech on the Democratic-led congressional panel on June 10, 2020. As we can see just by observing in this photo, we can see the raw emotion that Philonise shows in front of the congressional panel. Obviously, during the pandemic, everyone around him is wearing masks, but I believe that him not wearing a mask during the pandemic, and really no one's around him, but not wearing a mask shows something that's non-verbally to the people about how much his brother's death actually meant to him. The first thing I'd like to discuss in this is ethos. In the speech, Floyd's brother uses a strong ethos. Ethos in the textbook is defined as the character of the reader performed in the rhetorical act and known by the audience because of prior interactions. So as we see throughout this speech, we can see the raw emotion of Philonise Floyd as he tries and persuades to Congress how severe the situation they find themselves in at the time. The next one I'd like to go over is performance. For this definition, the textbook says all of the activity of a given participant on a given occasion which serves to influence in any way any of the participants, meaning that Philonise Floyd presented this speech. When he did present it, he not only presented it, but enacted a role. His role being that he is showing the emotion of how fed up an African American man is in today's society and how wrongfully his brother has been treated or when he was mistreated up to his death. The next definition I'd like to go over is identity. Identity is defined in our textbook as the physical and/or behavioral attitudes that make a person recognizable as a member of the group. The quote-unquote who, what are you aspect of the speech is simple. There are multiple cues in the speech suggesting that, in quotes, people of all backgrounds, of all races, of all colors have demanded change, end quotes. Here he is providing clues about his own identity, suggesting that he is hurt and a part of a group that demands much change, such as the BLM movement. Social power. The textbook defines social power as, in quotes, the influence that people possess within a particular social structure and that enables them to introduce others to act. A strong social power takes place within the congressman Philonise Floyd is trying to speak to. The congressmen in this situation have all the power to decide on however or whomever they deem fit on George Floyd's killing. Here Philonise is acting on basis of trying to convince the congressmen to use their own social power to make change. It is noteworthy that Philonise uses his own social power to show that change is possible, and by showing all of the support of the community around him. In the speech, he goes into great detail about how his community has helped him and how he'd like to see change in the community. The next one I'd like to talk about is identification. Identification is defined as a communicative process through which people are unified into a whole on the basis of common interest or characteristics. So in this situation, there is common interest in both the audience and the targeted audience. Everyone in this situation shares one common goal, and that common goal happens to be getting justice for George Floyd, both his brother, Philonise Floyd, and the congressman present at the time. So a little bit of pathos that I actually saw in here. Pathos textbook definition states artistic proof that leads an audience to feel emotion. And although verbally strong emotion is shown throughout the video through his words and his hand movements, such as nonverbals, his hand movements, and obviously the tears that he is showing, the visual emotion that Villainese shows is what leads the majority of the audience members to feel that strong emotion. So although you are not there at the panel with him, from wherever you are watching it, your home, wherever you may be at the time when you are watching this video, you do see and you do feel that strong emotion that Villainese is letting out. And that is a great example of pathos to me. So beliefs. Beliefs is a simple definition defined as sets of knowledge that is grounded in people's value orientation. In this speech, Villainese says, "I couldn't take care of George that day he was killed. But maybe by speaking with you today, I can make sure that his death will not be in vain. To make sure that he is more than another face on a t-shirt, more than another name on a list that won't stop growing." Here, I believe that Villainese is assuring that his beliefs are that he hopes that change can be made so that, as he said, his brother's death will not be in vain. Plain and simple. For a little bit of forensic discourse, that is used throughout this is the textbook defines forensic discourse as a rhetoric that occurs when a designed audience, such as the jury in this situation, judges the arguments about events in the past and accusations of his wrongdoing. So there is a ton of forensic discourse throughout Floyd's speech. He uses the rhetoric to target a designed audience, which in this case he targets the congressmen that are there and the majority of the people watching by targeting a rather white audience. So as you watch the speech, you do see that he, through his verbal, is directing a lot of his words towards a more white audience rather than a African American audience. He also uses the past factor by talking about the many wrongdoings that have been made when coming to decisions before, such as different cases throughout the United States in which an African American man has been harmed by police in a situation with police brutality. He is trying to talk to congressmen, to the panel, about how he does not want his brother to be another one of those decisions. So exigence. Exigence is an imperfection marked by urgency. It is a deficit, an obstacle, something waiting to be done. A thing which, other than it should be, the U.S. shows many imperfect qualities as it is such a big nation. One of the qualities that is very imperfect, such as the one Floyd is trying to expose us to, is oppression and disgraceful handling of his brother's death. And alike his brother, the many people that have passed away due to police brutality. Public. Public is a situation when people coming together to discuss common concerns, including concerns about who they are and what they should do and the result of constructing socially reality together. This setting, for example, is a perfect space for a public. Floyd delivers a speech in a courtroom, which is a setting where people come together to solve common issues most of the time. As we see here, you see him sitting down again, no mask, in the courtroom. This time his hand over his face, obviously non-verbally frustrated, and the emotional toll that has been taken on him is such a big one as well. Another element of this would be weak publics. Weak publics are publics whose deliberate practice consists executive in opinion formation and does not also encompass decision making. This definition of a scenario relieves heavily on an audience who is watching the real answer of who agrees and who disagrees with whatever decision were made and is going to be made. That leads us into hybrid publics. Hybrid publics are publics that do not choose between civic identity and deliberate politics, but instead recognize that both can exist in a mutually reinforcing relationship. The situation in a courtroom is a situation where nobody is usually never on the same side. So apart from the raw emotion that is going on in the courtrooms most of the time, anything can happen. Many share, actually, and many do not share beliefs. So anything can happen in a courtroom. People can agree, people can disagree, but most of the time we're going to see people not sharing the same beliefs, which is why they're present in the courtroom in the first place. That public will take us into our next publics, which is counterpublics. Counterpublics are parallel discursive areas where members of subordinated social groups invade and circulate counter discourse to formulate oppositional interpretations of their identities. Floyd's social group in this situation has a strong presence in today's society as we look on after when he delivered this speech on the panel. They share many common characteristics to many groups of the past. The strong evolution of Black Lives Matter movement, which is BLM that I was talking about before, has shown strong interpretation to the identity of the group. Floyd's brother, in this situation, not only speaks at this panel, but uses his identity, his form of identity, the identity of the group, to continue to other panels and future speakings in which he can inspire or maybe change the beliefs and minds of other people. So one of the questions that I had to formulate for myself is, what do I think? What does the writer think about publics? Publics, the ones we just spoke of, in form of the Black Lives Matter movement. So for me personally, publics are crucial to the rhetoric of the BLM movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. Unfortunately, the movement gets formed through negative things that have been applied on people of color. But the different publics that the group form are strong enough to continue using the rhetoric and hopefully one day change the entire rhetoric for good on BLM.